Welcome to Fruit Snacks, a weekday podcast that covers big ideas about the Christian worldview in a bite-sized format. Hey everyone, in today's episode we're looking at Psalm 4. And it is a short psalm, but I think there's some really good insights for us to apply to our lives today and to the world in which we find ourselves. So because it's so short, I'm going to go ahead and read it in its entirety right up front here. Psalm 4 reads, "To the choir master with stringed instruments, a psalm of David. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have given me relief when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. O men, how long shall my honor be turned into shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? Selah. But know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts on your beds and be silent. Selah. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, who will show us some good? Lift up the light of your face upon us, O Lord. You have put more joy in my heart than they have when their grain and wine abound. In peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety." Now, Psalm 4 is basically a contrast between the faithfulness and the trustworthiness of God with that of people. And we'll step almost verse by verse through this because there's just some really interesting and good thoughts everywhere throughout. So in verse 1, we see that the plea is made for God to hear in our distress and to bring relief. And David's point is that we can turn to God when we are in need. But verse 2 compares the motives of men to God. And it would seem that David does not hold a high opinion of other people's motives and their trustworthiness. He says that they love vain words. And the meaning of that, it can also be translated empty or worthless, and that they seek lies as opposed to the truth by implication. And in our context, we see just how much people flock to the latest gossip and the latest news stories without waiting to see if there is any truth in it before passing it along. And verse 3 ties this thought together by saying that, but God protects his own. Even if we can't trust others, we can trust God because God protects his own, and he truly hears us when we pray and when we reach out to him. He isn't duplicitous. And verses 4 and 5 continue by saying that this state of affairs of being in a world where people generally are not very trustworthy and generally have their own interests at heart and don't really listen or help in time of need, not like God does. This state of affairs could easily lead us into despair or even to lashing out in anger. But David reminds us, I think, that there is a difference between righteous and unrighteous anger. And he almost lists for us the primary differences between those types of anger, that righteous anger does not cause me to sin by losing control of my thoughts or my actions or my focus and my trust ultimately in God. And then finally, in the rest of the psalm, verses 6, 7, and 8, we see a contrast between the kind of peace and security that God brings compared to that of men. The joy and the peace that we have from being in right relationship with God transcends worldly possessions. It transcends our physical well-being. As David says, the joy that you bring me, God, is better than having a storehouse full of grain and wineskins full of wine, that those earthly possessions and having enough of those things is not in any way a comparison to the kind of joy that you bring. And it also allows us peaceful rest and sleep, not because of our situation, but because of who we belong to. So I hope you find this psalm encouraging, because David, in the midst of many types of situations and relationships which most of us would look at and say are not good from a human perspective, David retained an ultimate trust that the Lord would protect him and that his ultimate safety and security comes from God, not from men or possessions or circumstances.